Hey there everyone, Mazrock here, and today I thought it would be fun to talk about tanking trinkets, how they've been this expansion, what are really good ones, because sometimes you look at your gear list and you're like, alright, this trinket's not my best in slot, it's garbage. And that's not always the best mentality to have. Sometimes trinkets can be really good while not being your best in slot, and just because something isn't this doesn't mean it's complete garbage. So I thought I would go through and cover a series of trinkets which I think are either really good for DPS, survivability, or anything like that that might not be on your BIS list but could be really good for you. And on top of that, we have to always factor RNG. What if you just can't get certain pieces of your BIS while you're farming things out, or this or that? What trinket should you use while you're farming out your best in slot items and all of that fun stuff? So today I thought I'd cover a number of trinkets while talking about them a little bit, and just see if you can find a place for them as well, and where I've found a place for them, where I've seen others found a place for them, and all that fun stuff. Before we get started, please subscribe. It goes such a long way to support the channel. I cannot believe the amount of growth that we've gotten in the last little while, and I owe it all to you guys. Thank you so much. There is a link down below for Twitch if you like to see people stream. I stream. Also, my guild Bloodstorm is recruiting healers and DPS if that's something that does interest you. There is a guild link down below, as well as a guild community link down below. So whether you want to join the guild or not, you can always click the Discord link and join in. There's a community there full of people that are just insanely friendly, love talking about tanking in the game. It's just a wonderful, positive place to be. So with that, let's get into it. Now, you can't start a conversation about tank trinkets in general without talking cheat death trinkets. So you have the trinket from Sun King, as well as the new cheat death from Fate Scribe. New because it's been reworked, so it couldn't cheat certain mechanics. The Weaved Warp of Fates, which is unarguably the better of the two, so it's the one that you will see on screen. So what happens there, if you if you're killed by no more than X amount of damage, the Weave of Warped Fates will unwind your fate, returning yourself to life and healing for X amount, stats based on item level of item. This is just a straight up cheat death trinket. Very nice to have if you're progging content, if you know, you're running into mythic scenarios, or you're going into high keys and you just find yourself feeling a little bit more like paper. A cheat death trinket might be the way to go. You can get this on Fate Scribe on any difficulty. Of course, the higher the difficulty, the better your stats will be, but it will not change the actual effect that much. So if you can just get a heroic one versus a mythic one, that's not going to be the biggest difference in the world, unless you're absolutely trying to min-max every little point of damage. Up next, we're going to cover one of the most popular tanking trinkets in the game. If you've played Shadowlands at all, you absolutely know the Blood-Spattered Scale. So, you use it, every 2 minutes you gain a big blood barrier absorb, and it deals a bunch of damage. This is a very solid trinket all around. If you get this and equip it, you're going to be more than happy. It's great at dealing with tank busters. And if you're on Ragavan, the Blood-Spattered Scale as well, if you are at full health and you have this the absorb on this active, you actually will not gain stacks of the Corrupted Strikes debuff. It kind of works along the same thing with Brewmaster's Celestial Brew. If you have these absorbs, you won't gain the stacks. So the Blood-Spattered Scale is a very solid tank trinket to have. You can get this in the other side if you do not have one, or you have not ever done this farm. Every tank that's been around for a while knows what this farm is. It's definitely one worth getting, and it is an absolutely solid trinket all around. Up next is a relatively newcomer on the trinket watch list, and this is really good for tanks like Brewmasters, for Blood DKs, the Codex of the First Technique. So, it increases your stamina by a nice chunk, and taking damage grants you a chance to unleash the first technique for 12 seconds, reflecting 10% of incoming damage to a maximum of X times versatility, damage absorbed per blow. This is very solid for tanks that don't rely on mitigation to just reduce the damage reduction. So let's say paladins and bears, which, you know, your ardent defender uptime minus 20%, bears having survival instinct, spark skin all the time, warriors with shield block, and all of that fun stuff. You're not going to get as much use out of this codex of the first technique. But let's say Blood Death Knights or Brewmasters, whose mitigation is just actively re-healing the damage they take or staggering it off or things like that. Codex is a very, very solid trinket to go farm. You can get this in Streets of Wonder, Tazavesh. I have been trying to farm this on my BDK because I have seen what it can do firsthand. I haven't seen it firsthand, but I've seen it through logs and other people in the guild community and things like that. And they are ranting, they're just raving about how good this trinket is. So I definitely am trying very hard to farm myself one. I've done 8 mythics this week on my BDK, 6 of them were all streets, and that's what my last few weeks have actually looked like. It has been a lot of streets. The First Sigil. So what this does is you gain the power of your Covenant Signature ability, and you gain a literal butt ton of versatility. So the Covenant Signature ability is your Soul-Shaped or Shadows, Vial of Serenity, and Fleshcraft. But the real reason why you're using this is the literal butt ton of versatility that you're gaining from this on a 5-minute cooldown. Now that is a little high, which means its scenarios are mostly raid-based, where this thing can absolutely shine. For example, I pair this with Wings, Ashen Hallow, and Pot on the Lust phase, on the Remnant ads on Anduin, and you just see me skyrocket on the healing and the damage meters. That is where this trinket really, really shines, and it's very good when paired up with big cooldowns. Every tank has them, and this is just really nice. It increases your healing, it increases your damage, and it is a nice damage reduction on top of that. It does a lot of things, it just does different things for different tanks, but the First Sigil is an all-around great pick for raid tanking. It would have some niche scenarios on like Necrotic Week. If you're playing Kyrian, you would be able to use this and gain a few more Vial of Serenities. Not saying it's useless in Mythic Plus, just you're not going to get a lot out of it, right? Because you're going to get maybe 4 to 5 uses out of this trinket as a whole, but if you're not using it at the right spots or where you want it, it kind of seems like a waste just to bring it for one big pull or things like that. But if you need it for that one big pull, or you want it for that one big pull, go ahead, use it, and enjoy it. It is definitely a solid trinket. Up next is the Inscrutable Quantum Device. Yes, another one from the other side. This one here will give you a literal butt ton of secondary stat, depending on which one's your highest. This one is kind of... it's just a good trinket. It's a good DPS trinket. If you have a 3-minute cooldown, it lines up very nicely with it. So let's say, for example, if you're playing Venthyr Bear, you have Sorniness Incarn, you pop an IQD with it at the same time. All around solid, good damaging trinket. If you get it from the other side, you can't really go wrong with it. Up next is the Pocket Protoforge. So this one here is actually the opposite of the First Sigil. Now, the First Sigil, you get it off Prototype Pantheon. I'm sorry if I didn't mention that earlier. I'll mention it now. Pocket Protoforge, you get this off Lehuvum. Taking damage has a chance to fabricate an ally from the Pocket Protoforge who interferes with your enemy's attacks, assisting in combat and absorbing damage. This here has an absurdly low proc rate in raid from everything I'm seeing. From everyone that's tested it that I've talked to, the proc rate is absurdly low in raid, but actually has a really good proc rate in Mythic Plus. Something to do with the amount of enemies hitting you in Mythic Plus versus raid really does make this shine a lot more. Is this going to be a BIS trinket for anyone? I don't think so. Is this going, if you get this and equip this because you don't have BIS trinkets, are you going to regret it? Absolutely not. If you get a Pocket Protoforge and you're looking for just a fun trinket to play with and work with, something that is, so you don't have to it's not another button to press, it just kind of works on its own, you're going to get good healing out of it, you're going to get good use out of it. I don't think this is a total garbage trinket as it's being made out to be. I think it is not great in raid, but in Mythic Plus, from everything I'm seeing, does actually perform very, very well. Reactive Defense Matrix. This is another one of Sanctum and Domination, and I am sorry, guys, but guess what? There's going to be more. There are quite a few good tanking trinkets that come out of there, so we're going to have to talk about them. So, taking damage has a chance to trigger your Reactive Defense Matrix, which reflects the next amount of damage coming back at your attacker. The RDM triggers automatically when your health drops below 20%. This effect cannot occur more than once every 30 seconds. This is actually a solid trinket for both rating and Mythic Plus. You will gain a lot of healing out of this. That's passive. It's not an extra button to press. It will just occur. And I have seen the logs of people using this, and it works. It will offer you a ton. The only thing is you can't choose when it procs, but it is a solid option to have. Up next is another Sanctum of Domination trinket. This one here, you might be able to convince a few more people to get into, because there's a mount on this boss. So, the Shard of Annhylde's Aegis. This is still an S tier trinket for quite a few tank specs. So, you call upon the Aegis for protection, reducing damage you take in front of you by 5,000 for 8 seconds. If the Aegis absorbs at least X amount of damage, it becomes overcharged and will expel Coalesce power, dealing holy damage to all enemies in front of you as it expires. Now, upon reading this trinket, you might think that it's like, oh, okay, it only absorbs 5,000 for 8 seconds. No, that's 5,000 per hit. This is really, really good in scenarios where you are just being peppered by a lot of small hits, just constantly being whacked. Not the tank busters. The tank busters, something more like Blood Scale, is better for that. But if you're just if you're pulling big in Mythic Plus and you pop this, you will notice how much healing this thing can actually do and how OP it is. This is still a fantastic trinket that you can get off the 9 in Sanctum of Domination. If you do not have one, maybe it's time to try and get a Sanctum group together. There is a mount on this boss. You could do it. You could do it, and the first couple of bosses aren't that bad. So you probably could. Might be easier than setting up a group to try and get Guardian or Fate's Cry down for those trinkets. But if you have one in your bank, minute and a half cooldown, this is an all-around solid trinket and is an A to S tier for most tanks. Up next, we are talking the Ticking Sack of Terror. Now, this drops off the Postmaster in Streets of Wonder. It is a base mastery stat increase, and what it is your melee attacks and abilities have a high chance to attach a volatile satchel onto your target upon reaching 3 stacks, or when removed, the volatile satchel detonates, dealing fire damage. This has proven to be a fantastic DPS trinket, and if you are a tank spec that really likes mastery, Ticking Sack of Terror is definitely a good option for you to choose and pick. Up next, we're talking another, not Sanctum, Sepulchre, the first ones, Earthbreaker's Impact. This is actually a DPS trinket that's really, really good in AoE scenarios. You cause the ground to quake beneath your feet, dealing nature damage split between all enemies over 12 seconds. The damage is increased per target hit. Very nice. While quaking, you can sense tectonic weak points. Moving over a weak point will deal an additional amount of nature damage to all nearby enemies. These appear, so when you use it, you see the little cracks start to appear on the ground. Then there's these brown circles that kind of come around. You step on those, does a bunch of damage. This is actually really, really good in AoE scenarios. If you pick this up off Halandris, the crab boss, this is a really good DPS pick for Mythic Plus and AoE scenarios all around. Really, really good one. I wouldn't write this one off. It does deal a lot of damage, especially if you can get it in the right spot. Elegy of the Eternals. Now, this is going to be a 2-spot with Solia's secret technique. So these are stat sticks, just really basic stat sticks. One of them lasts for a half hour, so you have to reapply it during the dungeon run, which is Solia's secret technique, which you can get in Gambit. But it does give you a nice big chunk of main stat. I think at Island level 259 on my DK, it's like 110 haste, and it does give someone else a little bit of extra stat as well. It does help. It's really, really nice. And of course, there's Elegy of the Eternals. So this is good for agility, strength, and intellect users. So you weep before the Eternals, dedicating yourself to their service, and you gain X amount of your highest stat, and you grant 10% of this bonus to any party members who serve your covenant. Solia's secret technique is probably going to be better for Mythic Plus, because you are going to gain a little bit more stat out of it. Just base stat, you're going to gain more. Elegy is probably going to be better for Raid, because you can really kind of play around this a little bit more, and there is a lot more people that are going to be part of your Covenant than chances are a 5-man, unless you play Kyrian. If you're Kyrian, then there's a good chance, like, 4 people in your Mythic Plus group are probably Kyrian as well, so everybody gets the benefit of this. But do notice that it does say party members, not Raid team. So that is something to note, because you're going to have to work your party around within your Raid team to be able to gain the benefit out of this. But I don't think it's enough to really be like, hey, we need a Nightface squad over here. I mean, you could, but I mean, really, it is what it is. But these are both really, really good stat sticks that can kind of complement what you need a little bit more. At least with Solia's secret technique, the nice part there is if you're in need of a stat while you're still building up your gear and you have this trinket, you can gain some of that stat by finding the player that's, oh, who's running versatility right now? I need more verse. Okay, perfect. You have verse, I'll get the stat. Versus Elegy of the Eternals, it is just, you gain more of your already highest secondary. So, 2 good trinkets to have if you need more stats. All right, so that is pretty much all of them. Now, I've got a couple of special mentions. Number 1 is the Chains of Domination. This is the new one off the Jailer. You drive a spike in your target, dealing a chunk of physical damage and creating a chain link between you for 20 seconds. While the chains persist, 25% of the damage dealt is stored within it up to a maximum. I'm not giving the exact numbers because they change depending on item level, so please do note that. Moving away from your target will rip the chain, dealing the stored amount of shadow damage, increased damage to all enemies within 8 yards. This is an insanely solid trinket for a lot of classes. This as well, if used properly, can really be a good DPS trinket for your tanking kit. If you get this trinket, I would definitely not say no to it, let's just say. But it does require some use. It's not just one of those things that's passive, or I hit the button and the damage happens. I would really be playing around this trinket when I use it and planning around it. It does have a 3-minute cooldown, and if you use it right, it can be a nice big chunk of your damage, but if you played improperly, it could basically be dead weight. So just something to watch out for there. Up next, we're going to cover our last 2 trinkets. These are both solid trinkets in their own right. The only difference with these ones is one is pure agility and the other one is pure strength, which means only half the tanks can use each of these. So that's how we're going to cover it. The first one is going to be the Cache of Acquired Treasures. Now this one here drops off Artificer Zymox, which has proven to actually be really, really good, because a couple of those caches do an absurd amount of damage. So you periodically rummage through the cache, finding a new stolen weapon. You grab the weapon from the cache, gaining its benefit. Most of the weapons I'm hearing aren't that great. I haven't actually tested this one out yet, but some of them are actually pretty broken and a very good DPS increase. And I'm hearing on Bear that this is a fantastic trinket to go and grab, especially because Bear really, like, you don't need more trinkets for defensiveness. Like, Bear's super tanky as it is. I would be looking for more ways to increase my damage, because Bear is a little bit lower on the totem pole of damage, especially after the nerf to their 4-piece, which I don't think was completely justified, but whatever, is what it is. So that is the Agility Special Mention. The last one, and this, every strength wears Bane that doesn't have this yet, is the Old Warrior's Soul from Sylvanas in Sanctum of Domination. While in combat, your rage builds increases your haste for 20 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. When a nearby ally's health drops below 50%, you sacrifice a little bit of your own health for the same amount. This may only occur once a minute. Now, you're not getting this for the ally's health drop. You're gaining this because you want a butt ton of haste, and it is really, really good. You BDKs out there, if you have an old warrior soul, this is an insanely solid trinket to have for both rating and Mythic Plus, as long as you don't let the stacks drop off in Mythic Plus, because they do take time to build up in Mythic Plus. So if you're stopping a lot and you're letting this buff drop off, you're not really getting a good use out of it. But if your dungeon group is just go, 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 insanely solid trinket to have. This is also an insanely solid trinket for raid, where once you start the encounter, you're basically in combat the entire time, no matter what. So you will not lose stacks of this buff. If you can find a group running Sylvanas and Sanctum and you do not have this trinket, try and get in for the Old Warrior Soul. It is still insanely good. So that is my list of tank trinkets that are just crazy solid for Mythic Plus right now and raid. So if you don't have the BIS list, the BIS 2 on your list, and you have any of these other ones, you can make good use out of them. Just depends on the scenario. So I hope this list was helpful. Is there any trinkets that I missed? I tried to kind of include all of the better ones, from DPS to defensive, and kind of all the things like that. There's a couple on the list, like the File of Putrefaction, that I didn't put on, which I easily could have put the File of Putrefaction on here. It's a solid DPS trinket for any tank. Really, alright, let's put it on right now. File of Putrefaction, Plague Fall, go get it. It's really, really good. I guess I kind of just let that one slip through the cracks. That's my bad. But those are some great tanking trinkets for 9.2 and upcoming in 9.2.5. This might have to get updated in 9.2.5 as they make the other raids relevant again. Although all the Sanctum trinkets will be on here, maybe a couple of Nathria trinkets will make its way on here to be really good as well. But yeah, so that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys are gaining all of the trinkets that you like and having a happy farm time. Later.